What's up, guys? It's Chaz Hickman.
Rodney Roy.
And my name is Zaki Thokum. So today we're going to be talking about some successful tips for beginning educators. So when we get in, let's talk about what is educational philosophy. So educational philosophy is beliefs and values regarding teaching and learning. So some of those include what are ideas of learning, what is the process of planning instruction, how would I motivate my students, and how will my students be assessed. So now let's get into the learning experience. So there's two things you want to know when you're trying to make students remember criteria or learning. So you have a short-term memory. You also have a long-term memory. So first, let's get into our short-term memory. So our short-term memory is composed of two different ones. So it's rehearsal, which has no effect on our long-term memory. And we have elaborative, which is connecting with prior knowledge. So what we want to focus on, we're focusing on short-term memory is getting into elaborative short-term memory because this connects something to a real-life experience that they had or past experiences. So now let's go into our long-term memory. So how do you turn short-term memory into long-term memory? You have to constantly revisit those topics. So my first tip is, one, focus on elaborative short-term memory, and then two, continue to revisit that elaborative short-term memory so it can become long-term memory. So now let's talk about our classroom environment. So there are a couple of tips I have for our classroom environment. One, use reinforcements, and two, use punishments. So our reinforcements can compose of positive and negative. So a positive reinforcement is kind of affirmation. So if Johnny is doing good in my class, I would say, "Oh, good job, Johnny," or "High five, Johnny," or, keep up the good work. Things like that. That's positive reinforcement. Now our negative reinforcement is removing an unwanted event to correct behavior. So that is kind of like when you get into your car and you keep hearing the beeping sound until you put your seatbelt on. So the beeping sound goes away once you use a correct behavior, which is wearing your seatbelt. So now punishments, there are two types of punishments. There are presentational punishment and removal punishment. So I would advise all beginning teachers to use both of these. Presentational punishment is kind of like if someone is disrupting the class, and I'll use Johnny again. I said, "Johnny, let's please be respectful of the people around us. Let's not talk while the teacher's talking." That is presenting the problem and correcting it. Now, a removal punishment is something like timeout or removing a student from the classroom. So if Johnny continues to do that, I might say, "Johnny, may you step out of the classroom." So now we're going to get into instructional planning.
All right, guys. So when going into instructional planning, one of the most important things is classroom management. There's a lot that goes into that, and really it's just your base at the start of the semester and how you want to put your classroom together. And one of the first things you want to do is get to know your students. Getting to know who your students are is one of the most important things you can do as a teacher. This is going to allow you to be able to teach or help students in the best possible way. When I went out and observed Miss Green, she greeted each student at the door. And, it's just the little things like that will make a big difference in your students' lives and make them more comfortable with you. Having a positive learning environment is very important. How many students are happy to go to school now these days? Not a lot of them, right? So you should have a classroom that's a safe space for every student who walks in there. Each student should feel comfortable in the classroom no matter what. When it comes to the scenery part, bright colors and posters of things that your students are interested in will help also. Stations are also a great strategy to get students engaged and have a good academic performance. This also gives teacher time with small groups so that the teacher can get more individual learning in. Disciplining students is going to have to be something that you're going to have to do as a beginning teacher. Using positive reinforcement is a great way. An example that I saw a teacher do is give each student 3 strikes per month, and if they do not lose any strikes, they will get a prize out of the prize box. This will really give students the edge or the motivation to not want to get in trouble and want to do everything right. Mindful minute is a thing that a teacher uses where students work on breathing exercises for the first minute of class. This really just helps clear the mind and helps students be more locked in throughout class. And also the last thing is device hotel. So, how many kids do you all know that love to be on their phones? Most of them, right? That is why a device hotel is essential in my classroom. I have a number for each student that they put their phone in each day. This will keep students off their phones and will help them be more focused on the lesson. Going into motivation with Rodney.
All right. Why is motivation important when it comes to the classroom? It shows that you're engaged. Your students will be encouraged to achieve at a high level, and you will be able to inspire students. When I did my field experience after school, the teacher had incentives. Like she had like a treasure box for the students, so they was going over like a math problem, and they one student got it right, and she gave them like a treat, let them go up to the treasure box. So I feel like as a new teacher, we should give them like incentives. Like also, if you do like a ticket out the door, you can give them like a type of dollar for like the school store. So they'll be motivated to continue to improve in your classroom. Also, as a new teacher, I will have students, have like a goal, because when I went out to the middle school, the teacher asked his students, he was like, what's your goal for this week? And so the students said their goal. One student was like, I want to ace your test and do my homework and turn it in on time. And so the student did that. And also, I feel like you teaching them how to set goals for themselves and achieve at a high level in your classroom. And also, they will have improved performance and making their learning relatable.
All right, so now we're going to get into assessing your students. So a couple of tips that I have with assessing students is, one, you want to remain organized and you want to remain consistent. So have an organized grading criteria and know what you're assessing your students on. And with the consistency, you want to refrain from sudden changes, so that way your students will know what they're being assessed on. So that way there's no confusion on either part. It's either the student or the teacher part. We have a mutual understanding. So the next thing I want to say, when you're assessing your students, the one thing that I was told in both of my field experiences, that you must remain a student. So when you're reflecting, when you're assessing your students, that's a reflection of you. So that's a direct reflection. So you're really assessing your teaching style. So do constant reflection. That's one tip that I have. Do constant reflection, because your student performance will reflect your teacher effectiveness. And then be open to change. So that way, once you see, okay, I assess my students on this, they did well, okay, so I don't have to change anything. But if I assess my students and they're not doing so well, that is a reflection of me. So I have to be open to changing that, so that way they can understand my criteria better. So those are two tips that I have. Do constant reflection, and also be open to change when you're assessing your students. So now we're going to get into just a couple of general tips that we all put together. And
So relationship with students, how? Go into extra step in order for your students to know that you care for them. That can be anything from going to, have extra pencils for them if they need it, or have extra books if they need it. But after you create that relationship with your students, they will start to respect you more, and they will start to respect their classmates. As you see you creating relationships with your students, you will also see their academic success go up, because they are more comfortable with you, and they'll be more comfortable asking questions in the lesson, and getting the extra help that they need in order for them to get the good grade, or get the content that they need. So yep.
Focusing on your goals, so you will help the student feel connected. You can celebrate their success in your classroom. As a new teacher, I will implement and reflect, encouraging the student to expand their horizon, like broaden their experience, and also getting feedback from your students. I think that's a good thing, because you can see where you went wrong, what went good, and what went bad.
All right, so now we're going to talk about professional boundaries. So I feel like this is a big thing with new teachers, because one, we're young, so we're not that far off in age when when we're going into our profession. So we're close in age. So the main thing we should push is for professional boundaries. So we want to build our relationships, but we want to still maintain that parental-like influence to them instead of having more of a friendship. So how to do that is to be assertive, have expectations, and remain a professional. Don't get into, okay, I can break character with this student, but not this student, because that way you just built a friendship with them instead of building a teacher-student relationship. So it's nothing wrong with relationships, but let's keep our relationships professional. So those are all the tips that we have. Hopefully this is very knowledgeable for our beginning students, and I hope y'all learned something from this video, and we'll catch y'all next time.